On this week's episode of I-501-CU, the podcast for nonprofit board members, I'm doing another solo edition. Every other week we do a solo, and I'm just going to share some thoughts and some observations as I continue to work with clients all along the West Coast of Florida, but on the other coast as well. So it's an absolute pleasure of mine to work with a number of organizations. Hey, I want to jump in real quick. Somebody asked me the other day, what does the Corley Company do? Well, we do three things for nonprofits. One, we facilitate meetings, yes, like board retreats where we discuss governance and strategy with all the members of the board. Number two, advise CEOs and help them as they make decisions and implement actions to drive their mission. And then finally, we produce podcasts such as this one, but also for a number of nonprofits to help you get the word out, get your message out. So if you're interested in any of these services, please feel free to reach out to Michael at thecorleycompany.com. Now back to the podcast. I'm preparing for a talk on succession planning that I'm doing next week at the Manatee Community Foundation. And in fact, when this releases, it will be just a couple days after this podcast. And as I was preparing for it, I thought about, wow, succession planning, but let's back it up a little bit and talk about retention planning. And I'm talking specifically for the executive director, the CEO. And why? Well, we're coming upon a fiscal year end, and that's typically a time where you might do a performance review, or you should. Maybe you've wrapped up or you're about to have a retreat and identify some strategic goals for the next year. And if that's the case, then obviously what you expect from the CEO, the executive director, would follow the strategic planning goals and what you want him or her to accomplish over the next year. Sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? Unfortunately, what I am learning, and I've learned this over the past probably 3 years working with executive directors, that a lot of them do not have a performance plan in place. A lot of them do not get performance assessments. A lot of them don't even know where they stand with their board from a performance perspective. I talked a little bit about this before, and is that such a bad thing? Well, I would say yes. The good ones want to know where they stand. They want some certainty, some understanding, and they want their performance evaluated because they want to continue to grow and they want to continue to develop. And if you're going to implement some type of bonus structure, which a lot of organizations talk about, a bonus structure, you need to bonus that based on something. And you'd like to think it would be against goals that the board has approved for the executive director that relate to the overall strategic direction, strategic goals of the organization. It's just a cascading effect, and it just makes sense. And I cannot tell you how many executive directors I've spoken to and says, no, we don't have that in place. The board says they're going to evaluate me, and they have not. And as I've reflected on this, and I wonder why, and having been a former board chair and a board member myself, I probably have a pretty good idea of the reason, because it's a pain in the butt to do a performance assessment and get 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 people to finish the doggone thing. Yes, it's complicated, it's difficult, and as board members, we really don't know what the CEO does on a daily basis. But that's okay. There are tools out there, tools through BoardSource, tools through, I used to use a simple tool. What the CEO is doing right, can the CEO do better? If nothing else, if you survey the board with those two questions, you'll get somewhat of a performance assessment review and be able to outline some objectives going forward. And you really do owe it. You owe it to the executive director to do this for him or her. You owe it to them to take the time to properly assess and lay out the future, that person's future, and how they can improve their performance. Let me talk a little bit about compensation and bonus structure. I learned this a long time ago, probably the hard way. You never mess with somebody's compensation. And what I mean by that, sure, the obvious things, you would never cut it, but not having clarity on maybe their salary, what it's tethered to, the bonus, the opportunity, what it's tethered to, or even an employment agreement. Several executive directors have employment agreements that may be dangling out there, meaning they've never gotten signed, never gotten completely done. Oh my good gosh, there is nothing more demoralizing or de-incentivizing, if that's such a word, to a high-performing individual than not having some of that basic stuff completed and in place. And you say, well, they're still getting paid, so it's okay. And you know what? Yeah, they are still getting paid. But there's something about that high-performing executive director, that high-performing CEO, they just want it taken care of. Let's sign it. Let's get it done. Let's clarity. What do you really want me to do? What can I do to achieve my bonus? Because I'm accustomed to surpassing expectations. So I need to know what the expectations are to surpass. So you board chairs out there, guess what? Your responsibility to make sure it happens. Yes, you can delegate it. Yes, you can work through a governance committee. Yes, you can work through an executive committee. But at the end of the day, that's why you make the big bucks, if you will, as the board chair. You have got to work through getting some of that administrative stuff completed, because I can assure you, if you don't, that's occupying your CEO's time in terms of their bandwidth, their mental bandwidth, and it's holding back, even further driving the mission of that organization. And I just ask you, put yourself in their shoes. You want clarity from your boss wherever you work. You want clarity in your compensation and your potential, and you want to know how you're doing relative to benchmarks or whatever the case may be. So I encourage you, as the year winds down for a lot of nonprofits, this is a great opportunity for boards to really step up, implement an assessment process, an evaluation process, review compensation, solidify the bonus structure, clarify goals and objectives for the next year. So that's my 2 cents on this topic, as I observe just working with organizations throughout the state of Florida. I think we've got an opportunity to do a little bit better. So thank you for joining me on this week's episode of I-501-CU, the podcast for nonprofit board members, and I'll 501 see you next week.